Know what you are going to see in the sky this weekend: planes, trains, flying turkeys, or perhaps even UFOs. Yeah, really. A Pentagon report to Congress this summer could not explain 143 sightings of UFOs, or unexplained aerial vehicles. Several lawmakers on both sides of the aisle criticized the reports, saying it was inconclusive, and they wanted answers. Now the Pentagon is bringing in a new group to get to the bottom of what's up in the air. Times like this, we turn to Kelly Meyer to figure out what's up on the ground in D.C. Hi, Kelly.
Hey there, Leland. Well, it may not be the UFOs many think of or ET trying to revisit the Earth here, but the truth is we just don't know what it is, and neither does the Pentagon. And that's why they're concerned here if this is a national security threat, which is why they are launching this investigative group to find out what these unidentified objects are, to track them and find out what risk they pose here. It's the first move from the federal government here since that report you mentioned, where they only identified one of the 144 UFOs reported.
Yeah, they basically said it could be a classified U.S. project, it could be a Chinese or Russian military project we don't know about, or it could be aliens. They didn't tell us what these were the first time. May not mean that they don't know, but they didn't tell us. What makes the Pentagon think they're going to tell us this time?
Well, and that's the criticism that the Pentagon is facing right now. A former DOD employee slamming them, saying that if you want to maintain UFO secrecy, this is exactly how you do it. But some senators here in Washington, like Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio, he's been calling for oversight of these programs, and he wants more answers. Other folks I'm talking with reaching out and sharing this on Twitter, saying that if there isn't accountability here, it's going to be the same hide-and-seek game that they've been seeing for the last 70 years.
It's called The Vault, the FBI's digital reading room, where any of us can go online and view the Bureau's most notorious cases.
The most interesting memo that the mainstream media failed to report is this memo. This memo has a location of San Diego, California, with the date of July 8, 1947. A memorandum of importance. So the way the memo starts, this memorandum is respectfully addressed to certain scientists of distinction, to important aeronautical and military authorities, to a number of public officials, and to four publications. The writer has little expectation that anything of import will be accomplished by this gesture. The more fact that the data herein were obtained by so-called supernatural means is probably sufficient to ensure its disregard by nearly all the persons addressed. Nevertheless, it seems a public duty to make it available. The present writer has several university degrees and was formerly a university department head. So the agent who wrote this, or whoever wrote this within the government, knew that nobody will believe him, but he thought that it was his duty to disclose this. He also mentioned that the original author of this information actually has several university degrees and was a department head formerly. Let's continue further reading. A very serious situation may develop at any time with regard to the flying saucers. If one of these should be attacked, the attacking plane will almost certainly be destroyed. So now it's important why the writer thinks that this should be hidden from the public. So moving on. In the public mind, this might create near panic and international suspicion. The principal data concerning this craft is now at hand and must be offered, no matter how fantastic and unintelligible it may seem to minds not previously introduced in thinking of this type.
Everything else that we have in our current inventory is quite simple. There's 5 observables that associate, when you look at something as a UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, as being truly unique. That's instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocity, low observability, trans-medium travel, the ability to operate in multiple environments or domains, and last but not least, in the vernacular, would be anti-gravity.
Let's move on. Part of the disc's carry crews, others are under remote control. Their mission is peaceful. The visitors contemplate settling on this plane. Okay, I want you to remember, it didn't say settling on this planet. It said settling on this plane. These visitors are human-like, but much larger in size. They are not excarnate Earth people. So they're saying, so this author is saying that they're not actually Earth people, but come from their own world. They do not come from any planet, as so use this word, but from an etheric planet which interpenetrates with our own and is not perceptible to us.
With you an experience that I had at the in Rome not too long ago. I had the honor and pleasure of sitting down with some individuals that were out of the Vatican, and there was a scroll, and in this scroll it was written in Latin, and it was a communique between a Roman soldier and a Roman general some 2,000 years ago. And what they described in this communique was the name for the Roman shield is eclipus, means like eclipse, like a sun. And so they described these flaming Roman shields in the sky that would follow them from battle space to battle space. So it is quite possible we are dealing with something that could be potentially, not necessarily even from outer space. Believe it or not, it could be from right here. It could be right from this planet, and we're just now at a point where technologically we're beginning to interact with it.
Alright, that's a lot to digest. So they are not from planets as we think of planets, but rather from a different plane, and this plane interpenetrates our own. Alright, now let's take a break from this document and let's look at scripture and see if we find some clue as to what this document is pertaining to.
In the beginning, 3 were created. Man, made of clay, angels, made of light, and a third, made of fire, called the Jinn. Created with free will, this third race ruled the world for thousands of years.
What was Jinn created from? We have to think out of the box when we think of so-called extraterrestrial entities. When we think of life, we always think in terms of carbon-based life. However, that may not be the case in all parts of the universe. Life can be other known or unknown element based in other planets of the universe.
What might aliens look like? Nothing like us.
Jinns are one such entity that is not carbon based like human beings. The Quran tells us that they were not created the way human beings were created. Verily, we created man of potter's clay, of dark mud altered, and the jinn did we create aforetime of a smokeless flame of fire. Surah Al-Hijr, verses 26-27. And the jinn he did create of a smokeless flame of fire. Surah Al-Rahman, verse 15. Those 2 verses confirm the fact that jinns were created from fire, but that does not mean they appear in the form of some blazing fire, just the way we human, unlike clay, appear flesh and blood. Similarly, they do not appear in the form of fire. Same logic can be misconstrued about the so-called aliens. They may not be carbon-based like us. They may be other element-based, as such, have different capabilities than human. Okay, let's go back to the declassified document. The bodies of the visitors and the craft also automatically materialize on entering the vibratory rate of our dense matter. So let's look at some of the words that have been used in this document. Number one, they are from a different plane, P-L-A-N-E, not planet. Their planet interpenetrates with our own. They are not perceptible to us. And the final one is that automatically materialize entering the vibratory rate of our dense matter. So the word here, vibratory. This is interesting and important because now it gets into our theory of vibration or strings. So let us analyze all these words in light of science as well as scripture. Although this declassified document is from 1947, it does have something that actually was theorized in 1960s, which is the string theory. So this document has something that is quite phenomenal in terms of talking about a science that will come much later.
We look at a familiar object, just a candle and a holder, and imagine that we want to figure out what it is made of. So we go on a journey deep inside the object and examine the constituents. So deep inside, we all know you go sufficiently far down, you have atoms. We also all know that atoms are not the end of the story. They have little electrons that swarm around a central nucleus with neutrons and protons. Even the neutrons and protons have smaller particles inside of them, known as quarks. That is where conventional ideas stop. Here is the new idea of string theory. Deep inside any of these particles, there is something else. The something else is this dancing filament of energy. It looks like a vibrating string. That's where the idea of string theory comes from. And just like the vibrating strings that you just saw in a cello can vibrate in different patterns, these can also vibrate in different patterns. They don't produce different musical notes, rather they produce the different particles making up the world around us. So if these ideas are correct, this is what the ultra-microscopic landscape of the universe looks like. It's built up of a huge number of these little tiny filaments of vibrating energy, vibrating in different frequencies. The different frequencies produce the different particles. The different particles are responsible for all the richness in the world around us. And there you see unification, because matter particles, electrons and quarks, radiation particles, photons, gravitons, are all built up from one entity. So matter and the forces of nature all are put together under the rubric of vibrating strings, and that's what we mean by a unified theory.
Human eyes can only see a small portion of sun energy. This is called the visible spectrum. As it turns out, this makes up a large portion of the energy that makes it to the Earth's surface. Humans can see energy that range in wavelength from 380 nanometers to 700 nanometers. A nanometer is 1/billionth of a meter. For example, a human hair is about 90,000 nanometers wide. Within the visible spectrum, we see different wavelengths as different colors. A rainbow is a perfect example of seeing different wavelengths as colors. Violets are the shortest wavelengths, followed by blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. Red is the longest wavelengths of energy we can see. Energy the Earth sends back to space is in the form of longer wavelengths of energy. This energy is invisible to us because it's out of the visible spectrum. However, some creatures can see wavelengths that humans can't. For example, it's believed some spiders can see ultraviolet energy, which have very short wavelengths, while some reptiles can see infrared energy, which are much longer wavelengths of energy.
So whatever the pilot saw was within the visible spectrum of the pilots. However, somehow with technology they stayed out of the spectrum of the control tower radar.
Hence, the control tower never saw it. So, different vibrating strings can make different materials. In theory, then, it's possible that the orientation and the vibration of the strings can create two different realms existing in the same space and time, yet they are not directly interacting with each other. That may explain why we cannot see the jinn/alien, although they are around us. Like the animals in our realm that can actually see beyond our visible spectrum, it's possible that the jinn/alien can also see us, but we cannot see them. It's also possible that they can manipulate their string energy to go in and out from our realm to theirs and vice versa. It's also possible that they can manipulate the string vibration and send telepathy audio to our brain directly. Interestingly, Quran talks about a strange non-human beings called jinns. They seem to have a lot of similarity with modern day concept of aliens. For example, they can see us, but we don't see them. They're able to travel to the edge of the universe. They are shape-shifters, and many other things they do are uncannily similar to what we are contemplating an alien would be. Famous case that we had was in 2004. It involved the USS Nimitz carrier strike group. This is a nuclear-powered, if you will, aircraft carrier, along with a fleet of other vessels, nuclear-powered, and in some cases submarines. And so they were doing what they call workups, or they were practicing before going out on a deployment. And they were out in 2004 in November, conducting operations off the coast of San Diego, California. And there you have one of the escort ships with the latest Spy-1 radar capability beginning to pick up some sort of weird anomaly. In fact, not only was it the USS Princeton at the time with this brand new radar system looking at this, which one could argue maybe was a radar glitch, but you also had an E-2 Hawkeye that was also in the air providing airborne radar, and both are now looking at some sort of object, we'll call it an object, coming in from 80,000 feet and within less than a second, now hovering 50 feet over the water. So certainly something very perplexing. So perplexing, in fact, that we decided to go ahead and launch two of our F-18 aircraft, Super Hornets. And so as you had Commander Dave Fravor and Commander Alex Dietrich, this is Commander Dave Fravor, by the way, a Top Gun graduate and instructor. These people are trained to identify and determine the difference between an Su-22, a MiG-25, and a F-16 from 20 miles away. And by the way, make a decision to shoot it down if necessary. So they get vectored to the area, and the first thing they notice is some water roiling on the ocean. And so Dave decides, being the kind of pilot that he is, he's going to go in and take a look at this. So he conducts a very, very evasive maneuver to get down and close to what he describes as this white, looks like a Tic Tac, literally like the breath mint. And it's about 40 feet long. There's no windows, no real wings or control surfaces, no obvious signs of propulsion, and yet this object is witnessed now by 4 separate individuals in 2 separate aircraft, bouncing back and forth almost like a ping pong ball right over the surface of the water. So as he goes down and to take a closer look at this, all of a sudden this thing begins to react
to Commander Fраber's evasive maneuvers. And really, as Commander Fраber's coming in for a better look, this thing begins to maintain its distance and almost parlay, if you will, and keep a distance from this aircraft. So that tells us, first of all, it's intelligently controlled. And so as he decides this time, okay, I'm not getting anywhere here. I'm just going to go aggressively and go for this thing. Full throttle, goes in, and if you will, for that quote-unquote kill to see what this thing is. And all of a sudden, like that, it's gone. It absolutely disappears over the horizon within about a second. Now, what's even more scary, which is in about 5 seconds afterwards, and we know this conclusively, we did the investigation, this object now is picked up once again on radar 60 miles away. And in fact, it is now at the rendezvous point waiting for them. And that rendezvous point, by the way, is a point that nobody knew other than the pilots where they were supposed to be. So somehow this not only anticipated their next move, but was able to get literally 60 miles. You can do the calculations if you want how fast that is in 5 seconds. So something certainly well beyond our capabilities.
Okay, let's continue reading this declassified FBI document. The disks possess a type of radiant energy or array which will easily disintegrate any attacking ship. They re-enter the authoric at will. So authoric means, something that we can see, means our realm, and so simply disappear from our vision without trace. The region from which they come is not the astral plane, means the plane that we are in, but corresponds to the locus and tails. Students of historic matters will understand these terms.
Lo, he, Iblis or Satan, sees you, he and his tribe, evil jinn and demons, from whence you see him not. Surah Al-Araf, verse 27.
They probably cannot be reached by radio, but probably can be by radar, if a signal system can be developed for that apparatus. So the writer is suggesting that they are here with us, but in a different realm. So our realm does not interact with their realm, but they have the capability to actually switch to our realm and go back to their own realm. It's a very hard concept to grasp.
It is quite possible we are dealing with something that could be potentially, not necessarily even from outer space. Believe it or not, it could be from right here. It could be right from this planet, and we're just now at a point where technologically we're beginning to interact with it.
The next and the last section that we're going to look at from this document is very important. This section may tell us why this information has been withheld from public, and for a good reason too. So let's go ahead and read and see what the document says. We give information and warning and can do no more. Let the newcomers be treated with every kindness. Unless the discs are withdrawn, a situation with which our culture and science are incapable of dealing. A heavy responsibility rests upon the few in authority who are able to understand the matter. So, unless the discs are withdrawn, in other words, unless this information are withdrawn, then our culture, our knowledge, our science, our tradition, everything will be in jeopardy. That's what the author of this document is saying. Granted, there may not be any explanation in the scriptures of Torah, Bible, but Quran is a little different because Quran actually talks about these entities known as jinn. So I would highly encourage people who are interested to know more about the aliens. Please read the Quran and you will find out about these entities called jinn, or whom we are calling today aliens.